Welcome to the third driver focus session on practice. Maybe a starting place for talking about practice is wondering where the word came from. When did this word begin to be used as a way of talking about what's actually happening in real time among adults and youth, both inside or outside of schools? The word practice has Latin roots and simply means to do. In the positive, practice might signal a recognition that there's no final or perfect way of doing, just an effort that requires continuation. In the negative, practice might speak to the professionalization of education, away from common teachers and towards credentialized experts. Practice, within the scope of education, casts a wide net and includes K-12 classroom practices in schools, out-of-school and community programs, teacher education, early childhood education, youth work, and more. What is good practice? What is a quality education? What does it look like in action? Do you know it when you see it? If so, what are its attributes? If you made a recording of meaningful learning and teaching happening, what's in it? What practices live at the intersections of social justice, place-based learning, social and emotional learning, entrepreneurship, and youth voice? What is the role of leadership, mentoring, instruction, internships, service learning, documentation of learning, and authentic assessment in meaningful learning and engagement with young people? We hope the following clips provoke your answers to these questions and your thinking about practice as a driver of educational change.
We're going to be studying honeybees a lot. Like every day, we're going to be talking about them, learning about them, reading about them, and watching them. We're going to watch them fly. We're going to watch them dance. We're going to watch them eat. We're going to watch them clean. We're going to watch them make babies. Oh, come on. And what's different about that, baby? Look at it now.
Does cup have mass, you think? For me to print out a Xerox and have them memorize all the organelles, I don't get the point. They'll absorb it in a meaningful way when they need to. So you guys already figured it out, you don't need me? Knowing how to find the information and how to solve the problem is what's most important for me. Coming from sort of science and engineering background, my goal is that they can work as a scientist or an engineer, that they can identify a problem and find ways to go about solving it. You guys all know about Genera's beehive. One thing we talked about was building a raised platform. A kid can express his understanding for how something works through building, for example, or learn measurement through construction.
Paper.
Different people need different things. If we want children to be inventors, we have to give them opportunities to invent. If we want them to be artists, and we then create lots of opportunities for them to create art. If we want them to be problem solvers, we give them moments of independence to figure out things for themselves.
Good indicator, we believe that there's real predictive validity in the way in which we approach assessment. Rather than having a high-stakes test which puts everything on a single score and which leads, we think, to formulaic writing and doesn't really invest the kids in any way in what they're learning.
Because when I was reading it, I thought that you have really excellent ideas. I just thought that maybe we could do a little shifting around of certain things.
We want them to be able to take text and talk about it, be able to understand how to compare different texts, and to read whole books, not just little snippets of books. And we set them up with an external assessor. A lot of these people have got advanced degrees in literature, or they teach in a university, or they might write for a living. Someone who's agreed to spend an hour with that student and who then sits down with that student and discusses that book for 45 minutes or an hour.
To see whether or not he saw what she had done.
Right. What we're really trying to see is, can that student take that reading and go and talk to somebody that they don't know, a perfect stranger, about the book and have a conversation about it. That's one way that we can tell whether a student is ready to go on and do college level work.
When a baby is born in our society, we tend to say, oh, what did she have? How much does it weigh? Is everybody, are they all healthy? Athabascans in Alaska say, who came? If we really want to educate low-income and culturally diverse children, I believe we must learn who the children are and not focus on what we assume them to be. At risk, learning disabled, unmotivated, defiant, behavior disordered, limited English proficient. If we focus on the limiting labels, we teach children to limit who they are and who they can be. We all say all children can learn, but I believe the reality is all children do learn, and what they learn is what the larger society believes them to be. They learn it and they believe it. The title of the book I recently published is Multiplication is for White People. And that title came from an African-American child saying to her tutor, so, Miss L, how come you're trying to teach me this? Black people don't multiply. Black people just add and subtract. White people multiply. Now, the reality is no one has ever said that to this kid, right? I mean, I can't imagine this kid was ever in a situation where those words were uttered. And yet, living in the society in which this kid lives, this is the message that, Lawrence, I think you alluded to. This is a message that this child has internalized. So we have to, as educators, figure out how to fight against those messages that the children who are marginalized may sometimes bring with them. And that is the learning who a child is at a much deeper level than what the child knows or does not know. Asa Hilliard also said there are two kinds of questions, type 1 questions and type 2 questions. And type 1 questions that's the question we ask in school. And that question basically says, do you know what I know? Now, type 2 question, that type 1 question asks that. A type 2 question is, rather than asking, do you know what I know? A type 2 question says, what do you know? That's the question we have to ask in school. And that's the question that can lead us to educating all children. And this is the kind of question that culturally relevant teaching embodies. It allows us, when we find out or we ask, what is it that you know? It allows us to see the brilliance, the divinity in the children before us.
Wherever you are in history, like right now, this feels like an end point. It feels like everything that happened before inevitably led to here. And then we hear ourselves saying goofy things like, this is the best place in the world to be, this is the most wonderful this or that, or in a more resigned tone, what are you going to do? I mean, okay, it's crap, but hey, what can I do about it? And what the pedagogy of questioning says is you can ask that question and seek a better answer. So the fundamental questions that ought to ride beneath every classroom encounter are, who am I in the world? Who am I historically? Who am I socially, culturally? And that doesn't lead to an easy answer. Who am I in the world? And every thoughtful teacher ought to have that, if not explicitly, then implicitly in the back of her mind. My kids are walking into this room asking, who am I in the world? And a corollary question is, what are my choices? What are my chances? And the good teacher is opening up space where those choices and those chances become richer, fuller, broader, more powerful, and more important. And that, to me, is the essence of education in a democracy.
That this accent or that this way of thinking is the culture cultivate one. If there is one which is cultivated, this is because there is another one which is not. Do you see? It's impossible to think of that without of language without thinking of ideology and the power. I defend the duty of the teachers to teach the cultivated pattern, and I defend the right of the kids or of the adults to learn the dominant pattern. But it is necessary, in being a democratic, tolerant teacher, it is necessary to explicitly, to make clear to the kids or to the adults that their way of speaking is as beautiful as our way of speaking. Second, that they have the right to speak like this. Third, nevertheless, they need to learn the so-called dominant syntax for different reasons. That is, the more the oppressed, the poor people, get the command on the dominant syntax, the more they can articulate their voices and their speech in the struggle against the injustice.